Thank you for joining today's virtual sun session. My name is Rebecca Cherry, and I am part of the marketing team here at Laerdal. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. All attendees will be muted. If you have any questions during the session, please share them via the Q&A feature that can be found at the bottom of your screen. We will be monitoring them throughout the webinar, and we will have time for questions at the end. Today's recording will be emailed to you after the session is over to watch on demand. Now I would like to introduce the moderator, Andrew Christoph.
Hi, everyone. I'm Andrew Christopik. I'm the Senior Content Marketing Manager at Laerdal. And in that role, I have the distinct privilege of representing Laerdal as we bring to you some great speakers throughout the year. And in just a moment, I'm going to introduce two of them. And it's going to be, we're going to have a really great session today. At Laerdal, our mission is helping save lives. We pursue that mission by enabling you, our clients, to pursue best-in-class training and education for those who are at the forefront of delivering healthcare. You hopefully know us as the provider of best-in-class patient simulators, online scenarios, and our SimCapture learning management system. So if you are one of those people from either professional education, our nation's hospitals, or globally our hospitals, our EMS system, or our military, thank you for joining us today, and thank you for your patronage. So now I'd like to introduce our speakers. Our first speaker, Carol Renfro. She is the Assistant Clinical Professor and also Nursing Resource Center Coordinator at Auburn University School of Nursing. And following is Will Brewer. He is the Associate Professor and Director of the Simulation Center at the Anderson College of Nursing and Health Professions at the University of North Alabama. Carol, Will, thank you very much for joining us. Welcome. We're going to give you a chance to tell everybody a bit about your programs and give a shout out to your teams at those programs. So, Carol, why don't we begin with you? Why don't you tell us about Auburn, please?
Well, we are located in the south central area of the state. We are not connected to a large medical center like many nursing schools are, but we do have a VCOM medical school next to us. So we collaborate in the School of Nursing with our cohorts of 110 students twice a year, so about 220 a year. And we do our simulations in our 8-room sim suite. We have large skills labs, and we coordinate activities with the medical school, speech pathology, pharmacy. We have a big pharmacy program here at Auburn. So we do a lot of interprofessional education and simulation with those schools as well, in addition to just preparing our undergraduate and graduate students for licensure and NP practice.
Wonderful, thank you so much. And it was not by design, but it worked out quite nicely that we chose two schools from the great state of Alabama. So, Will, why don't you tell us about your program at the University of North Alabama?
Sure. So we are actually at the northwest corner of the state of Alabama. We have about 300-ish undergraduate students, and in the 200 to 300 range graduate students. We are currently the only health profession at the university, but we do collaborate with some other schools and other entities to reach that interprofessional collaboration. We are actually in a fairly new facility. We've been in this less than a year. We built our facility during COVID, and yes, it was pretty interesting. In our facility, we also have an 8-room simulation hospital with a med room, storage, things of that nature. And we have 2 large fundamentals and assessment labs. Between our sim hospital and our assessment labs, we have about 30 mannequins altogether. And we are the UNA Lions. We actually have a lion habitat on campus. And we have our mascot Leo. he resides in our habitat. So roar lions.
Very good. Excellent. So thank you both again for being with us today. Why don't I introduce our topic, and we'll begin moving through some of the subsections on that. So our topic today is TLC for your sim lab, how experts ensure optimal performance. We've spent a lot of time this year focusing on simulation best practices from a theory and teaching perspective, and from a pedagogical perspective. But now we're going to dive into some nuts and bolts, just some of the basic fundamentals that we should never forget to keep your sim lab operating at peak performance. So the very first topic we're going to talk about is megabits per second, why a dedicated online network is critical to your performance. And we like to begin our sessions to make sure everybody's thoroughly engaged out there with a polling question. So why don't we turn to that polling question? It should pop up in just a moment. So I'm going to read the question for the benefit of those who will be watching this broadcast later. Are you on a dedicated online network for your Laerdal mannequins and other devices? So we're going to ask our listening audience to participate in this poll. So the answers are pretty simple. Yes, no, I'm not sure what a dedicated online network is, or I really have no idea, but I bet my teenager does. So if everyone online could please just take a moment to answer that poll, and we'll look at the results in just a moment. And it will be interesting to see if the answers come up what we expect them to be. So the answer should pop up. So interesting. Okay, this is very interesting. 38% of the people have said, yes, I am on a dedicated online network. We're going to see. 45% have said, no, I'm not. And then we'll add to that the 12% that's not sure, and then the 5% that need to get their teenager involved, which is totally great. Thanks for being honest out there, folks. So,
Yes.
So let's talk about why being on a dedicated online network is so important. And first, we're going to show this picture that's shown up to make sure we're all clear. So a dedicated online network has two components. First of all, it is dedicated. It is not shared with other parties within your institution. Then the second component is that it is online, connected to the internet. So to be clear, that's our definition of a dedicated online network. It is protected from others, and it is connected to the internet. So why don't we turn to the question of why is being on a dedicated online network so important? And we're going to start with you, Will, if you don't mind. Why don't you take that question, and then we'll turn to your input, Carol.
Absolutely. Well, I think there's two main things that are so important about being on a dedicated online network, and it's functionality and fidelity, because those are two things you cannot lose during your simulation. And being on that dedicated network frees you up from having any problems. You know, everyone is connected these days. Students have cell phones, you have a cell phone, people have tablets, they have, anything that connects to the internet. You want a dedicated network where none of those things are going to interfere, and your bandwidth and your speed is not going to be impacted by everyone getting on that network. And you need this network protected because you do not want anything else on that network but your mannequins.
Carol, your thoughts?
No doubt. If you're running a busy center and you've got a schedule to maintain, you're going to reduce your downtime. You're going to keep your fidelity, as Will said, and all of your updates can also be done so you don't lose time with those unpredictable things coming in to interfere with what you've got to do in terms of turnaround and schedule being maintained. So all of those things are benefits, tremendous benefits.
Outstanding. Thank you. So before we go to the next slide, I'm just curious because I want to use this as a reminder that we will take Q&A at about 45 minutes into this. We will be opening this up to Q&A, but I'm kind of curious how many people who answered yes, I'm on a dedicated online network, are truly on a dedicated online network. In other words, are they sharing with others, or are they truly protected from, be it everybody getting on Facebook to perhaps the history department doing a big presentation, or something along those lines. So please, folks, if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A box, and we will be getting to your questions in about 30 to 35 minutes. So let's go to the next point. You've explained why having a dedicated online network is so important. I think you both have some good stories to tell, and Carol, we're going to start with you. What was your work like without a dedicated online network?
Well, I tease and say that literally work without a dedicated network for me by mid-morning became every single student. The rumor was going around that every sim that we did involved a resuscitation, because I would get in the middle of a simulation and the mannequin would disconnect and the students thought it was part of the simulation, and they would go down a rabbit hole with that and we would have to redirect. And so my days were very difficult trying to maintain that schedule because of the override that we were getting by the middle of the day with everyone on the network, and my mannequins would disconnect routinely. So it became a real driver for our path of how we could overcome that. And that's what drove us to get a dedicated network. Yeah.
Will, how about you? Do you have similar stories?
Yeah, if you've ever heard me speak in the past at any of the Suns, I'm big on getting in the hallway, bringing your mannequins out of the sim lab, transporting them places. Well, if they're not on a dedicated network, you can transport them a little bit beyond the door. And then just like Carol said, boom, they go into asystole. And while, resuscitation is an important aspect of simulation, that might not be your goal for the day or your objective. And then your whole objective is shot and your fidelity is lost. Because if you have to run out and say, oh, wait a minute, that's not what's supposed to happen, you do lose some credibility. And we want to build credibility with the environment and with the mannequin. Just time is lost when you have to keep rebooting the mannequin over and over again.
Have you ever had students push back and say, how could I meet the learning objectives if I'm thinking that my scenario is always a code scenario or is an ACLS scenario?
Yes, because it takes the focus off of exactly the desired learning outcome. And so you're having to redirect, and then your whole debrief is trying to clear up those facts and clarify, what really was supposed to happen and what was the desired objectives and outcomes that you were looking for. So yes.
And I'm sure it'll be interesting if people want to put it in the chat. Feel free to share your own experiences if you've had experiences like this. Let's turn to how you managed to justify going on to a dedicated online network, because that I probably takes some work. Not everybody who works in simulation is necessarily accustomed to speaking with their IT department. There may be finance involved. So Will, we're going to start with you first. How did you justify moving to a dedicated online network?
Sure. Well, I had a meeting with the IT department, and the meeting was with me, the IT department, and a mannequin. And I used the mannequin to show them what was happening. And, thankfully, because of the network we have at the university, the cost was really nothing because it was easy for them to create another network for us. And, hopefully it will be easy for you. It's just having a meeting, just being transparent with them. I don't know the IT side of things, and like they don't know the nursing side of things. And it was very easy for us to collaborate and talk through this situation. And just by showing them what was going on, they said, oh, we can fix that. And boom, we got a dedicated network. And, you know, I'm sure the students would love to get on our network with their iPads and such, but it does not happen. It's password protected. And yeah, it is, that is how I justified it, was just showing them what was happening. And, you know, I always revert it back to, you know, simulation helps with patient safety. It helps with teaching skills, all of those big things that simulation helps with. If you just explain that, most everyone, you know, can agree, oh yeah, hey, that was important.
Very good. Carol?
Very similar experience. I'm fortunate to have worked with a dedicated IT person who has now become a sim ops specialist because of my need for IT help, you know, in running a sim center, because I like Will, I'm a nurse, and then you have to wear both hats and really understand the functionality. And she indeed helped with that, came to the meeting with our administrators and our IT and made the case for what she had seen, what she'd had to assist with, and how by the middle of the day, everything was affected by the glitchiness of the network being utilized so heavily. So she made the case with me and helped me to create the need and speak to that need so that others understood.
I'll share a story. One of our clients actually went down to their IT department with a pile of help orders, help tickets, and said,
yeah,
do we really need to do this anymore? So I think your point, regardless, no matter what techniques you use, is get your IT department involved. I think that would be a good way to summarize it. Get your IT department involved. Very good. So anecdotally, how did your performance improve once you went over to a dedicated online network? And we'll pitch that over to you.
Yeah, no, I mean, delays, you know, there's no more staying late to finish the simulations. There's, you know, everything just was, I hate to use this word, but just seamless. It just was, I have a hard time finding a correct word to use. It was just such a transformational experience.
Yes.
Because everything just flows so much better, and there's no lag. I mean, you know, there's no you put in something on your computer and it goes to the mannequin immediately. It's great.
And Carol, how about you all?
100% agree. It was night and day for us, and truly, you know, you're battling enough things with your schedule in terms of keeping everybody facilitated and on time, but to have to deal with the mannequin delays and all of that was truly a very difficult thing to do. And it changed everything for us in our ability to keep the fidelity and keep on time and do all the things that we needed to do. It's night and day difference.
Sure. But in a moment, we're going to turn to talking very briefly about service, but there are some added benefits. And if you're using some of these features, please comment, because there's the benefit of automatic firmware updates, software downloads, and then online troubleshooting. If you're using any of those services, please comment, and I'll take a raise of hands, and whoever wants to go first. I don't know, Will, if you're using those services, or Carol, whether you are, but those can be interrupted too. And for those clients out there who are listening, if you're not aware of the ability for us to do online troubleshooting, or again, push out those firmware updates and so forth, a dedicated online network will facilitate that.
Yeah, I mean, it's I'll tell on myself.
Go for it, Will.
When I got my first SimMan Essential, I believe it was in 2010, when they were just introduced to the market. We did not have this, and I did not work at the university at that time. I worked at a hospital. We did not have this mannequin on a network in the hospital. And I never really thought about the updates. And when the tech came to work on the mannequin, there were quite a few additions of the update that had to be applied, and even on the mannequin's computer. And had it just been on a dedicated network, that could have been something that was seamless and automatic.
Sure. Very good. Carol, I didn't know if you had any comments.
Similar thing.
Yep.
I went to do a simulation prior to knowing about a dedicated network and any IT help, and all of these updates had to be done, delaying everything that I had to do to get started, because I had to do that prior to getting it to function. And again, lack of my knowledge is what really created that issue. So yeah.
The message is, please talk to your IT department and yes, sign up for a dedicated online network. That would be great. Awesome. So why don't we turn to our next topic, which is experts versus novices, why only a select few should work on your mannequins. We won't spend a lot of time on this, but there's an important message here, especially for people just embarking on their simulation journey. So I'll begin with you, Carol, and then we'll go to Will. Would you let a non-factory trained technician work on your simulator?
Absolutely not. That's my first and best answer, is because it's your biggest investment. If your mannequins aren't functioning the way that they should, then everything that you're trying to do is just kaput. It's not going to work for you at all. And so with someone without having that knowledge about that specific kind of simulator, because they are not all the same, they do not all operate the same, and you want quality work so that you can truly make this fidelity what it needs to be, because it's functioning the way that it should. Just like I wouldn't want shoddy work done on my house, or my car. I wouldn't want the work without a trained technician to be on the mannequins that we've spent a good deal of the university's money and donor money on to have. So,
and to be clear, before we move to you, Will, your technicians have been sent to, in our case, our facility, to be trained. So this is not necessarily about using technicians that come out from the factory, although Will, you'll talk to that topic. Your technicians have actually been trained by us, so they have been certified. Very good, thank you. Will, your answer to this: would you let non-factory trained techs work on your simulators?
Would you let a podiatrist perform open heart surgery on you?
Not going to happen.
No.
I'm hoping never to have open heart surgery.
Right,
thank you, but
no. We do not have any in-house trained people from Laerdal. We have the platinum protection plan on our mannequins, where we can send them in, and then yearly the techs do come out to us. But right now, I just do not have the budget to have a trained person, unfortunately, on staff. But I know that I have, Laerdal has my back. The technical support is second to none. If you need anything, yeah. And I mean, I have dealt with others in the past, and the technical support, if they cannot get it working for you right then, they will do all in their power to get you up and running as soon as absolutely possible. So that is why it is just so important to have your mannequins looked at or operated on by the people that know what they are doing, because as Carol said, they are your biggest investment. I mean, I spent $1 million on mannequins for my new facility. It was the largest piece of my budget for our sim lab. And, I have to keep those a while. I will not be getting that every single year to be repurchasing mannequins over and over where someone has, inadvertently, maybe connected two wires that shouldn't have been.
Sure, sure. Well, we certainly appreciate your comments, and we're humbled, and we're glad that you're happy with the experience. Let's go to some stories, because you shared a few things when we first met. Do you have any service stories to help others understand why you're so adamant about only factory trained technicians working on your simulators? Carol, we'll pitch that over to you.
Again, mine literally come from just mistakes that we've made by trying to either replace something ourselves that I tried to do without, trying to be talked through it on the phone by someone who really didn't have the knowledge that they need to. And so I had a simulation that simply was the chest would not rise because I had done something incorrect, because I literally did not have great guidance, and I didn't necessarily have my factory trained person at the time that could help me. And so once I began to try to work out the simulation, we literally had to have a huddle and modify the objectives, because we simply couldn't do certain things because we did not have breath sounds. We didn't have the lungs that would expand, because I didn't know how to do that well, or did it poorly. So it really opened my eyes to the need to have someone that truly knew what they were doing.
Sure.
Be able to maintain and replace some of the parts that we had broken from CPR use.
And we'll get to, maybe we can come back to that topic with our that very same subject when we talk about age of mannequins and proper use of mannequins. Will, any service stories from past history or others that make you feel so adamant about only using factory trained technicians?
Well, anytime you're dealing with fluids in these mannequins, whether it be the catheterization feature, the IV arm, anything to do with the fluid, you've got to make sure that part is functional, because if that fluid gets on your electronics in that mannequin, it's done. So you've got to make sure that the people that are working on, I say those parts specifically because those could really cause a major problem. Those things have got to be put in an exact way, or you will have a big problem.
Fair enough.
Yes.
So why don't we, we'll wrap up this section just by saying, please, and we can go to the, yes, there we are. Please use factory trained service, or make sure that your people are factory trained, because we want to make sure that your assets are well preserved and well taken care of. And I think you both echo that sentiment.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Very good. Well, thank you so much, and thank you again for your kind remarks on our service program. And we're humbled to continue to provide that service to you. So thank you, and thank you to all online that are using our service now, or sending your folks to our facility for training. So let's move on to a subject that I know, Carol, you're especially passionate about. I know you are too, Will. Faculty development. So we're talking about the nuts and bolts, the basic things that keep you operational, and this is a big one. We talked about a dedicated online network. We talked about professional service. Faculty development, why your staff needs to know how to teach using simulation. And I believe we have a polling question that's going to come up, and we are going to encourage everyone to fill out to answer this question. So here we are. When is the last time you have invested in faculty development? And we know there's been some hurdles since the beginning of 2020. When is the last time you've invested in faculty development? Not since the beginning of 2020. We have invested in faculty development steadily throughout 2020, all the way till today. We just started reinvesting in faculty development this year, or we rarely, if ever, invest in faculty development. So this will be interesting to see how much 2020 may have been a factor, or perhaps other things are factors. We'll see. We're going to see the responses in just a moment. And here we are. So the leader is, we have invested in faculty development steadily throughout 2020 until today. So that's interesting. That's 44%. 20% not since the beginning of 2020, 16% we just started reinvesting this year, and then 21% we rarely if ever invest in faculty development. I know, Carol, you're zooming right in on that number right there. So Carol, what does simulation faculty development mean to you at your facility there at Auburn?
I feel like it's really critical for your simulations and your skills in total for everyone to be on the same page with how their roles and how they conduct their simulations and skills according to the INAXL standards of practice. And we have brand new ones that are out from the INAXL organization, the healthcare, now they're called actually healthcare simulation standards of best practice. And the brand new ones just came out. And that's really the roadmap to get everyone on the same page. Because just because you are a great content expert or a great professor, it's not the same. There are specific nuances and differences and standards that guide what we need to be doing. And the understanding of those is critical, really, to have an effective faculty roles and how you get the best out of these simulations and how you facilitate that learning and then check on that learning through the debrief and how that works. So I think it's everything to having really quality simulations run is adhering to those standards, making sure the faculty understand that, how that fits in. And then, of course, there's also the other agencies or guiding accrediting bodies like SSH that also gives you sort of the what you need to have in your program. And then an INAXL standard sort of bring the how to do that to the program so that you can use to help guide your faculty development. We also use the Coursera courses. Washington University has some modules that are excellent. So there's a lot of ways to get your faculty all on board and on the same page, but those are the big ones that I can think of at this moment.
And I think we're all hoping that everyone online knows what the INAXL standards of best practice are. If not, please ask and we'll explain during the Q&A. Yep, we'll get into it during the Q&A. Will, any other thoughts on what faculty development means to all of you at the University of North Alabama?
Sure. You know, anytime I have a new faculty member or a new clinical supervisor, I always make sure that they stay with me till they understand the simulation lab. And, you know, going back to faculty development, you know, you do not have to attend a conference or attend a class, so to say, to have faculty development. As simulationists, we are leaders in the simulation community, and you can have your own class of faculty development. And one thing that I would encourage you to do is, you know, we as nurse educators, we are really no longer teaching the millennial age group. The millennials are now 38 years old. They're now CNOs, they're nurse managers. We are, and I'm not saying there are not some millennials in your class, because there are, but the majority of our new students that we have are Gen Z, and they expect everything on the demand. They want videos. So if you need a place to start with your professional development, get your phone out and start with your phone. Find ways to incorporate technology into your sim lab. We use tablets in our sim lab, and we airdrop things to them when labs are ready, or, you know, we may page the nurse via the tablet. Have them create videos, maybe even do, telehealth. We use FaceTime for telehealth quite a bit. So start there. Start with just brainstorming what applications you can use that you already have access to. It may not cost you anything to start with that, because it is so important that you not bring in essentially things that maybe we used when we were in nursing school. Myself and Carol, when we were getting to know one another, we were talking about, hey, we didn't have these wonderful mannequins when we were in nursing school. We had these just plain mannequins that did nothing without arms and stuff. So use your technology, embrace it, and make sure your faculty embraces it. And if you can afford professional development, please have Laerdal come and teach those classes on how to use those mannequins, because you will learn they do things that you never thought possible.
Absolutely. The time that we spent with our Laerdal folks coming to train us was the best half day or a full day that we spent, because you truly understand the functionality of that mannequin and being able to customize that for any given situation. It was tremendous. So helpful. So helpful. My goodness.
Thank you for that. And I think in the point, and we really do appreciate the endorsement. The fundamental point is not to miss this opportunity to really use the tools that you've invested in to their fullest potential to educate and train your learners. And again, thank you for the endorsement. Someone asked, and I'm going to answer this one right away, and then we're going to move to the next question. INACSL, that stands for the International Nursing Association for Clinical Simulation and Learning. So if you Google that as INACSL, you will find it. And
yes, and under resources tab, you'll see the healthcare standards of best practice that's right there on their website. And you don't have to have joined to have that resource available to you. So it's right there.
Precisely. So our next question is, now it's refreshing to see that 44% of our listening audience has actually been investing in faculty development. Bravo, outstanding. For those institutions that don't invest in faculty development, why do you suppose they're overlooking it? Why do you suppose faculty development takes a back seat? So Will Brewer, why don't we start with you?
I mean, if I had to guess, it would be money, because it's costly, but as I said in my previous comment, you do not need money to develop your faculty. You can do it as the simulation leader. And if you are struggling with that, there are so many resources online, taking those standards of best practice and just having a collaborative meeting on those standards and what those mean to your sim lab. But if I had to guess, it would totally be cost and maybe time and maybe faculty workload, because, I'm sure there are many faculty on this webinar. Our workload seems to increase, not decrease. And, that takes time. And I'm sure development often gets pushed to the back. But, you will not be doing yourself or your students any service by doing such. So just find a little bit of time for faculty development. Again, whether it's something you create or something that you pay, maybe someone to come in, it is just so important to not overlook such.
Carol, any thoughts real quick?
Completely agree. And just like if any of you worked in hospitals prior to coming into academia or simulation, you know how important it is that we prepare for accreditations with Joint Commission and other things. We would always have just even 1 hour lunch meetings to go over different expectations or standards or that kind of thing that we were going to have to talk about and really design the way we lived. and the way we operate it every day in that way. And I consider that the same thing with faculty development. It's literally just ensuring that you are truly doing the very best job to prepare people the way they need to be. And if your faculty, you can literally just take a standard a month or a week or however you can afford to do a small session and just talk about that and how that would look and how that would impact the functionality. So there's many resources out there to assist you, and you don't have to let money and all of that stop you. There are ways to do that. So
great. Good to hear it. We're getting some good questions in. I'm sorry, Will, you had a quick comment?
Well, I was just going to say, if time is a problem for you, you can always video yourself with your camera feature on your phone. There's an app I like to use called Clips that can make really professional looking movies and upload it to your university's learning management system and have your faculty view it that way.
Absolutely.
Very good. So just because we are getting some questions in, I'm going to move us to our next question, and maybe we can just come up with just a few bullet points on this one. How does the new virtual world impact faculty development? Improve it, facilitate it, expedite it, challenge it? Go ahead, Will. I see you. Well, you're both smiling, but Will, go for it.
Well, during the pandemic, we almost had to transition just overnight. So we were almost, forced into this virtual world of teaching. And I know I had to create a virtual simulation. I had never thought of doing a virtual simulation ever.
Yes.
And I created one. I did a critical care one. And, I came to the university, I got permission to come, and I had to get a trach from the lab and got some things. And I videoed myself being different patients, and I videoed the monitors, and the virtual world, it's not going away. Your students, as I mentioned before, they prefer video over reading. They prefer things to be digital. So anything you can make digital or make them, make it relatable to how they communicate is extremely important. And as I said 2 other times, I believe, please incorporate that in your faculty development some way. And even if it's just in class, use augmented reality some way in class. If you don't know what that is, there are apps that you don't even have to create anything. Those augmented reality simulations are there for you. There's a great one on COVID out that I have used in class before, but just make sure you are incorporating that virtual piece for your students.
Very good. Carol?
No doubt. And it literally, again, the transitions that we've made, we've learned how to create effective tools, not only for students, but again, for each other, for faculty development using this great technology that's out there. And more people are sharing those resources because we had such need in such a short period of time. So, you can transition anything to a virtual environment in different ways. You just think about how you want to create that, and then you can do that, and then have the students evaluate different video segments that you can embed, and have watch, rather than them performing it. They're evaluating as an observer someone else's performance, but they're still getting that out. You can still have those discussions and that instructor facilitated debrief throughout and then at the end. So there's ways to do things that we truly were pushed into discovering, but a lot of this is great stuff that we won't ever abandon, I don't think, entirely, because we really discovered some good things, some really good things that we did. So I agree with Will. There's solutions out there. You just got to get a little creative and look and see what options you have and how that needs to look, and you want it to look to achieve the outcomes that you're desiring to get out of the simulations.
Outstanding. Thank you. So one last question regarding faculty development, and then we'll move on to our next topic briefly. 2022, looking towards next year, how should we be thinking about 2022? Should it be focusing on the new and Axel standards of best practice, virtual learning, anything else coming down the pike that you think we should be focused on?
I think
Augmented
it, all of
reality,
you mentioned, yeah, augmented reality is going to be huge. Go ahead, Will. But
yeah, that I was just going to say that. I mean, if I had to add one thing, it would be augmented reality. And you know, I was even reading an article the other day about advanced providers and using texting as a mode of simulation for them. And so, you know, I think just anything you can do to incorporate technology, you need to be forward thinking, because technology is not going away, right? It's here to stay. And we've proven that we can educate nurses, you know, using technology. And we just have to move forward with that and ensure that all of our best practice standards and one little snippet on the ANASCL standards. If you have a SIM committee, you know, I would incorporate those into your rules and regulations and into your SIM labs policies, because those are your guiding forces on how a simulation should be.
absolutely. It's your roadmap, and then you can customize it to get there meeting all of those requirements. I think it's the way to shape everything about what you're doing, is to make sure you're adhering to those along the way. Augmented reality is going to be huge, and the use of virtual reality to help with practice time and that deliberate practice that people truly need to get to the point or the level of mastery that they need to be. We can't make everybody proficient on everything, but because schedules and time are so limited, I think that you're going to see more and more use of virtual reality and augmented reality to assist with lab time and skills practice and other things. And I think that's going to be a huge facet of what we do going forward. I just don't see any way around it, because that's the only way sometimes that we can achieve what we want to. Simply, you can't carve out the time with students being in clinical in class and all of those other things. That's about the only way that we can get to it. And there's some really good research on it too, about what it really does well. So I think you'll be seeing that more and more.
Outstanding. Thank you. So now we're going to spend only a little bit of time on this, because I do want to see us get to these audience questions. But our next topic, refreshing technology, why having the latest technology improves efficiency. When, and Will, I'll put this over to you first. When do you know if your simulators deserve a rest? When's it time to either think about retiring them or think about using them for different purposes? Go ahead.
Well, if they quit working, obviously, you know that it's time to look into something else. You know, and they, as we have said several times, they are your largest investment. And at the hospital I worked at previously to coming to academia, we still had the original nursing ands that were stuffed with horsehair from the 60s, I believe. They had kept those. I don't know why they kept them, but you know what? It was a good argument for me when I went to buy a simulator to say, this, you know, this is what we have. We have these old mannequins, you know, but, you know, when your simulators start to malfunction, when they start to, you know, tear up and you no longer have that warranty in place, it may be time to start looking for options. And I'm not saying throw those away. You can use them for moulage. You can use them for chest tubes if you have an advanced class that needs them. You can use them for trachs. Anything that, you know, I know the first time that we did a simulation when we got our brand new mannequins and we were actually doing a crike, I almost cringed cutting that brand new mannequin, because I was like, oh, you know, well, you know, you don't have to cringe if the thing's not working. One creative thing we have done where I teach is we have given our old mannequins to our criminal justice department. They use them for crime scene mock-ups. So they have several of our old mannequins from baby to our birthing simulator even. And that was something that, you know, really never dawned to me. And they reached out to me one day and I was like, you know what? Under the storage locker, I have a bunch of things that might be beneficial to you. And it's worked out really good. And also, you know, a lot of your fire departments will sometimes take your mannequins to use for rescue. But you can use them too. You can use them for disasters. You can use them for transport. Think about your fundamental students. If they need help with transfers, that's a great way to do it. But you know, when they start to malfunction and start to not work for you anymore, it may be time to start looking at replacing them. And you know, I know everyone wants to know a time frame. Well, that's hard to say. You know, 5 to 10 years, but you know, you could even get longer out of them. But it is important that you have a working mannequin. If you're going to conduct a high fidelity simulation, your mannequin needs to work. It cannot malfunction because you are not conducting a high fidelity simulation if your mannequin is not functioning at a high fidelity level.
Very good. Thank you, Will. Carol, any other thoughts?
Just to reiterate what Will said, I 100% agree with everything, and the wise choice of your equipment for what use and what purpose is so critical in making your mannequins last optimally, because you really do, you know, you really may have some great choices depending on what the objectives of that simulation or skills need is. You might not want to have that simulation where you're starting IVs and doing this with your, you know, your 3G. You might want to step back and to use a different simulator, or even task trainers in addition to that, and create a hybrid situation so that you're not sticking that arm on that very expensive mannequin and use something else to supplement that environment. So the wise thought into exactly what you're trying to accomplish and what would best do that is going to really help you get the most mileage out of all of your trainers and simulators, certainly.
Great, thank you. We're gonna just use this next slide just to summarize real quick. I think you've already said there are uses for your old technology. There's
Yes.
proper application for having the latest technology. Carol, if you want to offer one quick word, and then we'll go to you, Will, and then we're going to turn to some audience questions.
I think invest wisely in some of those things that have multi-uses in terms of the latest tech and what your curricular objectives are. And then you look at what you really need the most with the latest technology, and then what you can also balance and use very well without having to upgrade everything. Because again, like Will, when you make a huge investment in mannequins, because we have a similar number, you're not going to get that in a lump sum again, you know, when you build, and you may have that initial capital investment. So you have to think about, how do you phase things in, and how do you wisely spend the money that you have to upgrade what you need? You know, so it's one thing to buy the latest and greatest if you're going to use it one time a year versus something that you use repeatedly every semester. You're really going to have to put a lot of thought into, just because it's the latest and greatest, what are your needs? You know, so you got to balance those things well.
Will, in 30 seconds, quick thought.
Well, I echo everything that Carol said. But, you know, I think you also, in keeping up with technology, is look to healthcare. What is changing in healthcare? What are the technology trends in healthcare? Because, you know, if your students are going to be seeing something different in the hospital, that may not correlate well to your objectives. So just keep abreast to that as well. And, you know, with your students, I'm going to say it again, if you can't beat them, join them. Bring technology in your sim lab, because you're not going to beat them. You must join them, and you must find ways to incorporate technology into your sims.
Very good, thank you. So now we're going to turn this into some lightning rounds. We're going to take some audience questions, and we're going to go right back to a dedicated online network. Here's our first question. I've reached out to IT at our hospital facility about establishing a dedicated network. Their reply was that the separate network would limit data traffic, but not overall interference. also is using a router, a type of dedicated network. Do either of you feel confident answering that, or I can go ahead and take that? All right, I'll take it. So really the point is that, and this will be in layman's terms, but the response needs to be that I need a dedicated network connected to the internet, and a network that no one else can use. It's got to be for my simulation purposes only. That's the bottom line. Next question is, will a dedicated network automatically update the firmware on the simulator? Do you still have to connect to the instructor PC to the simulator? And that is a technical question outside of my scope, but we are going to make sure that, just because I want to make sure that the person gets the correct answer, unless Carol, you already know.
No, I'm
so we're going to get that person.
That's my thinking.
We're going to get that person an answer immediately after. So now we're going to turn to faculty development. How much time is spent on orientation for new faculty?
At our university, our new faculty get 1 year of orientation. Now that is not simulation specific. Our simulation staff, I guess they would technically get a year of orientation as well. It's more guided orientation, where we stay with you initially and we have training for you and such. Any new faculty that I am actually the only faculty member in our sim lab. I have staff members under me, but any new staff member that I bring in, I make sure that I have them some professional development days from Laerdal. They must be familiar with the NASFL best practices of simulation. That is absolutely key to doing such. For our new faculty at the university, we have something called the Junior Mentorship Academy, where every single month a different topic is brought up. And, obviously there are some of those that deal with simulation. They are not all simulation based. But we also, I mentioned in our learning management system, we have a lot of videos. For example, I have a whole video in there on how to use our electronic health record. And, just having those things at the fingertips. So, I know a year is not always feasible. That is quite a long time. But, if the more time you can get, the better product you are going to get, because none of us were born simulationists, right? We learn this on the job, and it's our duty as simulationists to pass that knowledge on to others, because, we're not going to be around forever, because we will retire one day, right? So it's so important to make sure that you pass your knowledge on to others. Don't keep it bottled up and as a secret. Always you give that knowledge back to your I almost said clients, to your coworkers and to your faculty and to your staff.
And we're going to take one last remark from you, Carol. And then what I want to do is tell those who are asking technical questions, we are going to respond to you after this virtual sun to make sure that you get your answers. Carol, any last comments before we depart?
I couldn't agree more. We are very particular about giving our new faculty and or staff the training that they need, whether that takes 2 semesters or what, to allow them to not only learn about those standards and the specifics about roles and the simulations and how we work through that, but we also would not allow them to take on like the debriefing role. We're really careful about protecting some of those things that really you need a little more advanced training in order to give them time to do that. They might have a role like a clinical instructor or a simulated participant or a family member in the scenario first to sort of see how it shapes up, and until they've had time to look at each role from front to back, pre-brief, during this scenario and debrief, and then have time to go through those standards. So I wouldn't say we have a set time, but we usually will give them several semesters and several different iterations and simulations to go through before we would put them in any role until they were ready.
Very good. Thank you. We did receive a number of other questions about INACSL, that is the International Nursing Association for Clinical Simulation and Learning. We will make sure that everybody will get a recording, and so they'll have access to that information right there. I'm sorry to say we're going to have to wrap it up. I wish we could stay on longer, but I want to thank you both for joining us. So Dr. Will Brewer, again, from the University of North Alabama, and Carol Renfro from Auburn University. Thank you both for being with us. You've been so gracious and very generous with your time. So thank you for that. For those that will watch this on the rebroadcast, we've got some resources that we'll publish or post in just a minute. But please remember, we're here to give your lab the help it deserves. So if you need to reach out to us regarding any of the topics you heard today, please contact us. Some exciting news: the sun is back. So prepare to join us in Houston, live, face-to-face. We've been doing these virtual suns since the beginning of the pandemic, but we are going live September 12th through the 14th in Houston, Texas. And then here are those resources that we mentioned. So if you need to talk to us about your network, you can find us at lairdal.com/network. If it's services and programs, it's /services and programs. You see it right there, and you see our phone number. Please join our Facebook group, our Virtual Sun Facebook group, where we exchange a lot of great information. And again, Carol, Will, thank you both for being with us. And to our audience, thank you for being patient. We ran over by a few minutes. We hope it's worth it. And again, for the technical questions, we will be reaching out to you to make sure you get your questions answered. Thank you, everyone. Broadcasting from New York today, and from the great state of Alabama. We wish you all well, and really appreciate you joining us. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.